mixed-use projects, commercial and residential, will use the affordable commercial fee in lieu schedule up to the affordable commercial FAR bonus zoning maximums, and then additional FAR comes through IH. So if I'm reading this correctly, if I'm a mixed-use project, I have, so is this mixed-use projects with 20 or less units? Is that what you're trying to clarify here?
Yes.
And then so I have to use affordable commercial first and make up the rest through IH.
That's the way I understand it, but I'm going to really defer to my colleagues here to explain the program because that's part of the whole administrative rule approach that they've developed.
But the short answer is yes.
Okay.
Chair, last one, I promise. And Barry, if this is going to get answered in your presentation, you don't need to answer it. But my original question was, what were the parameters in the code section we recommended or we adopted that sort of inform as we're looking at what these administrative rules do? So was there much there in terms
Original
of specificity,
language.
or how did we characterize what we were looking for?
It was pretty open-ended. We actually had, going way back, we had initially, the initial code language for affordable commercial space specified a 25% rent reduction from market rates and I believe I can't remember, a generation before we had a 20-year time frame. And through the process of the stakeholder group that Prosper Portland had convened and had discussions about what really works for providing affordable commercial space for tenants, those parameters were seen as infeasible. And I think Allison's going to cover that in a moment, but those were the original parameters. The ones that were forwarded to council ultimately said, look towards the administrative rule requirements for the guidelines for what qualifies as affordable commercial space.
Did we say anything about the interplay of affordable commercial and IH, or what? Did we just sort of left that to be decided?
It's pretty silent on that, aside from the fact that the bonus table 130-3 stipulates that you can only earn so much from affordable commercial and you can earn this much from inclusionary housing.
Can I try and summarize this back to see if I'm getting it right? Since the zoning code is silent on, sometimes the zoning code is explicit about what bonuses you can earn in what order. In this case, since it was silent on it, did Prosper Portland have a negotiation with Portland Housing Bureau to figure out that clause that Kat just read? Or how did this idea that mixed-use projects, the first dibs is Prosper Portland, second dibs is the city of housing?
Yeah, so yes, we have had those conversations with the Portland Housing Bureau with the idea that the fee in lieu are set the same as the current inclusionary zoning or inclusionary housing fee in lieu, and that the bonuses would sit next to each other for these specific projects, so under 20 units in mixed-use zones or commercial projects, and that you would first look at, earning your 50% of the total FAR available through the affordable commercial, and then if you wanted additional FAR, you'd look at that existing inclusionary housing FAR.
And I just want to clarify that if you're building it on site, it's the choice of the developer to choose whether they're going to provide affordable commercial on site or whether they're going to do a voluntary inclusionary housing on site. So that's a choice. I think the other relationships are really dealing with any fee in lieu that might be moving forward.
Any other questions before we pass it back? Nope. All right, go ahead, Kira and Allison.
Great. Just before I kick it off, I do want to say thank you to Barry and Tyler Bump have been a great help in just kind of continuing to roll this process forward and encouraging us to really drill in on the administrative rules. So yeah, we started with this kind of broad statement in the zoning code that was a 25% discount to market, and through our process with the stakeholder advisory committee got to this point that we have the 90% draft of administrative rules that you guys received last week. So the administrative rules define an on-site option, a fee in lieu option, and a flexibility to combine the two if necessary. The on-site option requires a high level of tenant improvements, or a hot shell option. That's kind of in instead of a cold shell or a warm shell in the retail world. This level of tenant improvements is above and beyond what a landlord would typically build out. The hot shell landlord work standards are the affordability component, which lowers the barrier of entry to new space for the locally owned, women-owned, businesses owned by people of color, and nonprofit organizations that serve underserved population, which we've kind of defined as our qualifying businesses. So I'm going to walk through the on-site option and the fee in lieu option. So the on-site option requires the developer to follow the hot shell landlord work standards. The landlord will provide this level of build out they wouldn't typically, which includes walls, electrical specifications around HVAC, ceiling finish, fees, restrooms, flooring, and signage. When a tenant is building out a space, just adding a single restroom can be a $30,000 expense. So having this kind of built-in set of tenant improvements is something that can really be an advantage to a tenant. The leasing requirements and administrative rules.
Allison, quick
Yep.
question. Sorry, I got the architect curious about dimensions. Is
Sure.
that a typo or is so the landlord has to provide dimensions? What do you mean by that?
So,
or are there specific dimensions you're
yeah.
asking to be
Yeah,
required?
if you look in the standards, there are dimensions on depth and height,
So
and a
minimum
minimum
dimension.
of 600 square feet.
Perfect.
And we tried to mirror those off of other rules that we've applied in zoning about minimum height and depth and location of entrances and things of that nature.
And that 600 square feet measurement is kind of where the combination option comes into play. So if you can't kind of provide the right number of square footage of affordable commercial space, you could find a combination of on-site, and then you need an extra 200 square feet to make your building like physically work, and you can pay the fee in lieu for those additional square footage. So the leasing requirements include leasing to tenants that meet Prosper Portland's qualified criteria, which are local businesses that are women-owned or minority-owned, or is a nonprofit organization that serves underserved communities, that pass a financial evaluation. This is a look that will drill down into a tenant's financials and make sure they're in a position to succeed and demonstrate that they need financial need. The way that we're currently doing this in some of the projects that Kira mentioned earlier is that we have one of our underwriters look at business plans, profit and loss projections for 2 years, 2 years of historical and personal business tax returns, year-to-date project loss and balance sheets, and a personal financial statement. So with that package, we're able to kind of say, okay, I think that you can afford the rent in this space and that you will be successful. That's kind of the bar we set for the spaces that we're master leasing. In addition, Prosper Portland will provide a form lease, and we'll review these leases to ensure that costs are not passed on to a tenant. The building owner, within this 10-year affordability period, will need to re-tenant with a tenant approved by Prosper Portland. And the remedies, if a landlord's found out of compliance, are the same as the standards that the Portland Housing